Hello and welcome. You're watching Business Today TV. I'm Sakshi Batra, and this is a special edition where we're going to be focusing on what to really expect from the upcoming union budget tomorrow. Also, it is going to be a big day that everybody has been keeping an eye out on for a long time, especially the salaried class. Remember, the budget really plays an important role in the lives of the salaried class community in India. Any change in the revenue or the expense side of the budget has a direct impact on their daily lives as well. An expectation from the salaried class always from the budget remains on more tax saving opportunities on the one hand and getting more benefits in lieu of tax payments on the other as well. The question then is, will budget 2023 really provide tax relief to more than 80 million taxpayers in India? Joining in to discuss this and much more with me are two very special guests on the show. I have Mr. Aravind Srivatsan joining in from Nangia Andersen LLP. He's a tax expert, and Gauri Chadha also joins in, who you've often spotted on our platform. She's also a tax expert. Welcome to both of you, and thank you so much for taking the time out for this discussion. Aravind, let me kickstart with you, and with the same question, which is the biggest question on the minds of the people, the middle class, the salaried class, right now, right ahead of the budget. Will the common man and the salaried taxpayer really get tax relief in budget 2023-24? What is the expectation that you have?
Yeah, I think the expectations are quite high because the last couple of years, people are hit by the pandemic, and the cost of everything, as we know, has gone up. And the GST slabs have remained, elevated, as we all know. So if you have high inflation and you have high fuel, and which is in a way a tax, and heavily taxed commodity. And then on top of that, if your disposable income is going down because of inflation, I think it's a very reasonable expectation that individual taxpayers will have. And also, if you really see last 3 years back, we've been giving incentives for corporates. We've lowered the tax rate substantially from 30% to 25%. We've got a new code, 15%. So absolutely high expectations that taxpayers will be left with more disposable income. We don't need token measures. We need, I think, a complete overhaul of the current tax code so that it can run for the next 5 years without yearly kind of mechanisms to change that.
Right, absolutely, Gauri. What are your expectations this time around? Will we see the non-exemptions tax part being pushed in budget 2023?
See, Sakshi, like Mr. Aravind just said, of course, expectations are high. But if I talk about this particular budget, this will be the last full budget of this government, because next year is the election year and they'll be presenting the interim budget. So correct. I think that, of course, they should make good changes. They should give good relief to the taxpayers, to the common man. But although at the same time, I feel that this budget will be disappointing. And next year, when the interim budget will come, at that time, they might give some relief to the taxpayers, like they did in the budget presented by Mr. Piyush Goyal in like the interim budget he had presented. So this is my expectation from this next budget. And I think that the non-exemption part, you're talking about the new regime, I think personally it's a total failure. Not many people have opted for it, and I don't think so that it is a successful scheme. So, of course, to keep it going, I believe they will make some changes in the new scheme. They will make it lucrative, because I think the government wants that the old regime should be abolished and people should focus on the non-exemption part only, and they should go for the new regime. So yes, I believe that there will be some changes in the new regime, but overall, I'm not expecting much from this budget.
Right. Aravind, would you second that when it comes to the new tax regime? Will that be on the top of the radar of the government this time around, since there have been very few takers for this one? To make it more attractive, can the government be really looking at some changes to that?
Yeah, so I think the data is there before them that very few people have taken up this regime. If you ask people to go to a regime and say you're not entitled to claim a deduction for your house rent, I mean, that's I think, and a host of other deductions, it doesn't really work. So I the recommendations that we believe are sensible is let's let everyone move into the new tax regime, but then give a very high threshold so that people see the benefit of jumping into the new regime.
Yeah.
So rather than having too many slabs moving every 2.5 lakhs, I think we need a more liberal new regime which allows people to forget. And I think one or two reductions are required. I don't think there's any country in the world which has a personal tax regime where you don't get to claim any deductions.
Okay, okay. But Gauri, do you also feel that this personal income taxation has become very complicated with the two offerings? You also said that the new one is complete failure, according to you. So this could well be an opportunity for the government to really look at simplifying the personal tax regime for in India, whether it is about retaining just one, but make it absolutely, simple and attractive at this point in time. Perhaps also, just like how Arvind pointed out, fewer tax slabs, rate rationalization for that one as well, not moving every 2.5 lakhs, and perhaps the highest bracket of 30% moving in higher too, over and above 20 lakhs, for example.
Yeah, so of course it is really complicated, and people still don't know that they want to go for the old regime or the new regime. They are still confused. And if you talk about people who are into businesses, they cannot, change the regime every year. So they are stuck. Once they opt for the new regime, they can withdraw just once. So they are stuck, and it's really complicated. So to make a decision, it's very difficult for them. So, of course, I believe that eventually they will go away with the old regime, but it will take time. Suddenly, in this budget or probably in the next budget, they won't do such a thing that they'll abolish the old scheme and they'll stick with the new regime. I think it will be a process. It will take some time, few more budgets, and ultimately they'll go away with the old regime and they'll stick to the new regime with definitely better rates, better rationalization, lower rates, and like he said that it is just 2.5 after every 2.5 lakhs, it's 5% increment. So there are a lot of slabs. It's very confusing for a common man to understand. So they'll make it simpler, and I think this is the future.
Okay, let's move on to understanding the other part of taxation, and that is more relevant for all the stock market investors as well. I'm talking about the capital gains tax regime. Arvind, do you think there is need for the government to look at revamping the entire capital gains tax regime as well, just like the personal taxation here too? Things differ when you talk about different assets and duration, tenure of holding, and etc. And there's different rates over here too. What is it that the government can really look at? And how can the government really cater to it? Of course, keeping in mind when the last time the changes happened, the stock markets had crashed very badly. So this time around, what can we see over here? Can that be something that the government may be looking at tinkering with, or should they absolutely stay away from it?
No, I think the Revenue Secretary has announced that it needs to be overhauled because capital gain provisions were amended every now and then on a standalone basis. And products were being sold or distributed to investors where you would buy a product not on its intrinsic value, but based on its tax adjusted returns and whether you got indexation. I think with high inflation that we have, the economic survey also points out that we are going to be having, higher levels of inflation. I think investors need to have a choice of products to which they can invest, and to have distinctions between products based on the period of holding, I don't think is a fair thing. So I think the government has announced that they would overhaul, but would that result in the government actually increasing the taxes? It's obviously it's an easy low hanging fruit because all data of capital market transactions are captured today. There's STT, which is also at an all-time high. If they increase short-term capital taxes or merge short-term capital gains and long-term capital gains on equities, um, all these are possibilities. But then, would that happen? I think that's $1 million question.
Yeah, absolutely. Your thoughts, Gauri, on the same, on the long and the short term capital gains tax, and how should the government be approaching them now?
See, again, this is a very confusing area. If you talk about equity, it becomes long term after 1 year of holding. Then, if you talk about property, it becomes long term after 2 years of holding. And if you talk about other classes, then it becomes long term after 3 years of holding. And everywhere the rates are also different. So it is very confusing for a common man to understand in which category they fall in. So, like feelers are also coming in that there will be a change. So, I think there'll be a standard holding period for all assets. And maybe there will be a single rate also, although it looks very challenging for the government to do that. But I think we'll see a change here. Something or the other will happen.
Okay, I understood that. What about the dividend tax at the hand of the, employees right there and the investors? That was also not taken too very well by the community. Do you think that should be tinkered? Gauri?
Yeah, it's a question to me or
Gauri.
Yeah. See, if we talk about dividend, so DDT was removed, and then dividend is taxable in the hands of the shareholders. So I don't see any particular change coming in, although you never know what comes in, but I don't think so there will be a change.
Okay, Arvind, your thoughts on it?
yeah, I think if they change the slabs, then the dividends would also get merged with the slabs. So if the old regime just does not has very low threshold. So if we can look at a higher threshold, and if we see that come through, then I would imagine the taxation of dividends would automatically move in to the slabs. But having introduced something very recently, to expect the government to change is unlikely.
Okay. And Gauri, anything on the corporate tax front? Any changes expected there, or it's going to be status quo?
See, I believe that there should be a change in taxation of LLPs and partnership firms, because if we talk about corporate taxation, it has already been reduced. So,
Yes.
If a person wants to start a business, they won't straight away go and form a private limited company and start their business. So, partnership firms and LLPs are still very common thing to go with. So, where the tax rate is much higher than the corporates. So, I believe that to bring partnership firms and LLP in the, alignment with the corporate taxation is definitely a good step, and we are hoping that they reduce the taxation on LLP and partnership firms also. At least it should come in line with the corporate taxation. So I don't see any further reduction in corporate taxation, but yes, partnership firms and LLP can see a change.
Okay, Arvind, do you also agree with that, or is that something that should not be tinkered with now?
See, I think the choice of what structure a particular person wants to do business should be left to the individual. It should be having lower compliance and lower regulation, and it should have, tax should not be the basis. But right now, people would not look at an LLP because it has a highest tax rate. So it is like saying that we don't like people to have an LLP structure, which
Yeah.
is a bit odd actually.
Okay. What, Arvind, according to you, could be a make or a break when it comes to tax changes in this budget?
So I think if they don't change the personal tax regime, I think it would be a big letdown, because it was a promise that was given by the finance minister that we've given all incentives to corporates. We should look at individual taxpayers. I think the number of people who are filing tax returns have gone up. I think you are getting more people coming into the formal system. So if you allow them the benefit of lower tax, you give them a graded system to comply and pay their taxes. I think that would be it would be something that I would feel that's something that we all expect, and if that doesn't happen, I feel it would be a big letdown.
Okay. Gauri, are you expecting any surcharges? I mean, 42% at peak had raised a lot of hue and cry. But being a pre-election year, should one expect anything on that front?
Again, surcharge was very recently, increased. So I don't see any change there. And then again, as I said, it is a pre-election year. Of course, this is the last full budget, but next year interim budget will see a lot of changes, which is actually not allowed as per me. But then last time also it happened. So I don't think so there will be any change in surcharge. And next year, maybe you'll see more changes. So let's see.
Okay, Arvind, what about you on the surcharge front?
Well, I think all chief ministers of states have said don't levy surcharge because it's not shared with the states. But I guess the revenue compulsions, they're making them continuing with surcharge. So I don't think they would change the surcharge.
Yeah.
If they bring a higher surcharge for capital gains, that's something which is possible. But otherwise,
Okay.
um, I assume that government would not increase surcharge when the Council of Chief Ministers have actually asked them to drop surcharge.
Okay, understood. So just like, last 1 or 2 minutes before we wind down the show. So last thoughts from you. What are your big three asks or big expectations? The time of ask is really passed out, but yeah, the three big expectations that you may have from the budget this time around on the tax front. Gauri, starting with you.
So, first of all, I won't say that increase the basic exemption limit, because I think that's not possible, because the government
Okay.
wants to increase the tax filers base. So at least raise the 87A rebate, which is right now 5 lakhs. So at least increase it to 7 or 7.5 lakhs. Second would be again rationalization of the whole long-term capital gain structure, as we just spoke about. So there should be one holding period and one rate for all asset classes.
Okay.
Third would be to raise the standard deduction, which is very low. It is just 50,000 rupees, which is nothing. That was also brought in after taking out the transport and medical allowances. So that was actually nothing. So this was not any additional benefit given to the taxpayers. So I think the standard deduction should be raised. This will benefit all people, all the salaried and the individuals who are into business profession. So this will be a very good step. So these three steps, I think, should be taken.
Right.
Let's see.
Okay, Aravind, what are your top three expectations from the budget?
Yeah, so personal tax side, I believe we should try and bring out a totally new code which doesn't have the legacy of what we have in terms of ATC. I think with inflation where it is and with high GST, I think for people who are earning income up to 24 lakhs, or I would expect that if the top rate can be capped, effective tax rate can be capped at 15%. I think more people would be more than happy to move into the new regime. So I think rather than trying to fiddle with the current system, I think we need to have a convergence in the new system which just allows people to move into the new regime. I think that would be something that we expect. I would also expect the technology model of the department today has created a lot of concerns for individual taxpayers, has created demand. So I would want that system to change. I would also want pre-filled tax returns to be applicable for taxpayers up to a particular threshold, so that not everyone has to file, detailed tax returns. And I think these are the two key things from a personal tax point. And if you allow a higher threshold, everything is taken care of. Whether it's affordable housing, whether it's house property, everything is taken care of.
Okay, well noted that. Lots of expectations right there, but we'll have to just wait for a couple of hours now, few hours to go for the union budget, when we will finally see whether the salaried class taxpayers and this class really gets any kind of a relief on the taxation front, which really needs a revamp on the personal taxation from this time around, as both my panelists have just talked about as well. Many thanks, Gauri, and many thanks, Aravind, for being with us on the show and sharing your insights as to what do we really expect from the upcoming budget. And here's hoping to catch up very soon with you post the budget as well, to find out whether what's been taken place has been enough that's been done for the middle class too. Many thanks for joining in, and do stay tuned on to Business Today TV to catch all the live and exclusive and real-time analysis of the union budget tomorrow as well. Many thanks.